I'm starting the stream 2 minutes earlier. Don't worry, finish your coffee. It's just to, start chatting and make sure that you get notified of the stream going back. If I remember correctly, I set up a notification that said CSS is classic, come check it out, something like that. And we haven't even started doing CSS. I'm sorry for that. I promised CSS and we got stuck with Git, with HTML, and especially with the technical problems. So many technical problems today. But still, we are here, strong, and we'll never fall. Or if we fall, we'll get back to business. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna hit me now. 12:16 my time, so 1 minute. I see 0 viewers for now. Okay, now it's 12:17 for me. So I'm gonna say the usual. I see 8, Jabata. Okay, so probably it's the stream manager that is even telling me a lie. Thanks a lot for the feedback. So, as always, 15 minutes later, which is stolen from SpongeBob, of course. The cool thing is that I saw the videos that were recorded, and finally I see again the stream chat. So at least that problem was somehow solved, and that's the good news. So let's get back to coding. I hope your coffee was good. I didn't take one because I'm already in a frenzy. And so we can go back to, we were talking about comments, right? So I said this really quickly because we were about to go to coffee break, but still, comments are really, really important, especially at the beginning for now. I'm part of a school that says that comments are useless and you should type as fewer comments as possible, but we'll talk about this. Comments are actually important. And you can see that a comment in HTML is pretty strange to type because you have to put a less than symbol, just like when you're creating a tag, but then exclamation mark and 2 dashes, not even 1, and then you can type whatever you want inside of it. This is good to do 2 things. One is to write a comment about what you are creating. You can even wrap something inside of 2 comments, for example, end of comment, okay? Or you can say, I don't know, beginning of new part, and here you say end of new part, okay? So you can define a piece of code that you want to separate from the rest, saying that this is the new part that I'm creating, this is the end of the new part, from here it's all old part, or something like that. There's no real good or bad convention. Well, there are lots of bad conventions. For example, there are some people that put lots of characters, because this creates some sort of horizontal rule that is not seen by the browser, but it's seen by you, the developer. So you have a clear separation of 2 sections of the same code. This can be seen by some as a best practice and by some as a really bad practice. There's no unique source of truth about this. Session frozen? Again, I can't believe it. Is session frozen for everybody? No. PNTM, this time is a problem with you. I'm sorry, PNTM. Tell me if you are able to see us again correctly. I'm starting to think that all of this could be, well, multiple problems. One with OBS, one with Linux, but maybe also Twitch. Just refresh. Twitch is a pretty new platform. And I think it's amazing for some reasons. For example, it has so many features that allow you to, there's so many plugins that you can add to your stream in order to, keep the interest or just to have fun. I used to add some sound alarms too, but now they probably don't work anymore because there's this browser plugin that doesn't work anymore. Okay, so yep, just refresh. PNTM is okay. Okay, so comments are important to describe what you're doing, describe to the developers, not to the browser or to the users, because the users will never see whatever you write in the comments. And they are also very useful sometimes to just silence some bits of code that you just don't want to be executed at the moment. For example, this paragraph that says this is temporary, I just want to leave it out but not completely remove it. And I can do this with, well, my combination of keys is Control-Shift-7 or /, which toggles the line comment on and off again. Okay, so you will probably start using comments from now on. I will probably start using comments from now on. And okay, then we can go on with other things. For example, links. And if you know a little bit of gaming, you know that this is Link from The Legend of Zelda. So yeah, stupid joke. You know pretty much everything about links. So I don't even know what to tell you about. Links are created with tags called A's because they are anchor links, and you can have multiple location types. In fact, some of you already saw that you can create links to emails that open your email client. So let's go to the reference and let's see if there are any other interesting things that I can show you from here. So you know that this is the basic structure, right? You have an A with an href that describes some location that you can specify. And then you can write the text of the link as a child of this tag. So for example, this A has an href of http://todolistme.net and shows the text todolistme.net. It will be shown probably as this, or probably not. Usually links by default have an underline, which is not shown here unless I hover on the link. This is the magic of CSS. Through CSS, they applied a different color, which changes whenever I hover on the link, and they removed the underline on the link unless I hover on the link. This is all done by CSS, but the structure of the document remains the same. The HTML is exactly the same. We can have multiple location types, and you probably already know them by now because we already talked about absolute and relative paths on the file system. Well, we have absolute and relative URLs, addresses, when we are dealing with links. And that's why I wanted to also stress so much on relative and absolute paths on the file system. It's really important for programming, but it's also strictly related to global and relative links. So this is a global link because it's a URL, it's an address to some website. This is also an absolute link, a global link that shows a specific page on that website, but still it's a global link because wherever you're still going to ryanstutorials.net, blah, blah, blah. And then we've got relative links, and here nothing should be new to you, or probably yes. Well, let's see. .htmlimages.php means go to this file starting from the current, well, probably not current folder. Yeah, you can say the same directory. Yeah, the same folder on the page. Okay, starting from this folder, go to htmlimages.php. And you probably know that you can even strip away this ./ because whenever you put the name of the file, it defaults with the file in the current folder. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it 01links.html. I'm going to write HTML5 code, and in the title, I'm going to say links. Too fast. Don't worry. You can start copying and following along. Don't worry. Sometimes I go really fast in order to prove a point or just to show you what I'm going to do, and then give you the time to follow me. But if I start again too fast, you can just tell me, hey, too fast, please slow down. I'm still copying. I'm still trying to write code. So really don't worry. Just need to give me feedback about it, because I cannot see you. This is the really bad thing about this kind of lessons. I love to see my students' faces, even if they are puzzled, if they are like a question mark, even if they are like this. Gotta go fast. Yeah, we go supersonic. Okay, so we're going to try a couple of links. For example, I'm going to create a global link to Google. Why Google? Why not? href, and here I'm going to type the location of Google, and then I'm going to say Google. This is the text of the link. So what should I put in the href? I should put the URL of Google. And if I don't remember it, or if I just don't care about it, I can just go back to the browser, ask for Google, and apparently it's google.com. So I can copy with Control or Command C, and I'm gonna paste it here. As you can see, the URL that I copy is not exactly the same URL that is now pasted here, because the browser usually tries to remove all the unnecessary parts. So the browser tells me google.com, which means it removes HTTPS and also www. But then if I click on it, I see it all. I just need to click twice. I click once, and then I click twice, and I see the whole URL. So the complete URL is actually this one. And this should work out of the box. So I save it. I go to that URL. I'm gonna change here the name of the file, and I see the Google link that allows me to click and go to Google. I think I can also type something simpler. For example, if I type google.com, what happens? It probably doesn't work. Let's see what happens. Ooh. Something really strange happened. What happened? You know what? I'm not gonna tell you. I would like you guys to try to guess what happened. Why is this link broken? Let me see if you have a clue of what happened. I love these debugging sessions, which force you guys to think actively, and I love generating errors, because it's always through errors that we create experience. Angelo says maybe because the first part with HTTPS is missing. Yes, that's a good clue. Yeah. Not only, I think that if I type www, I don't know if this works. Let's see. No, still not working. So you're probably right. Maybe this works only if I specify the HTTPS blah blah blah. Even without www, maybe. Yeah, it works even without www. So what's the catch here? What's the problem? Well, look at this string of text, google.com. You know already that this is a web address, of course, but think like a machine. If I see a string of text like this, I see a word, Google, then a dot, and then another word, com. Well, this is usually the structure of a file. This is the file name, this is the separator of file name and extension, and this is the extension of the file. So, of course, this is not a file, and it's not a file with an extension, but the machine doesn't know. The computer is pretty stupid sometimes and cannot tell if this is actually a web address or if it's a file in the same folder. And apparently, by default, the computer thinks that this is a file on the same folder. So whenever I click here, you will see that now the URL is looking for a file called google.com inside of the same folder I was. And that's why we need the HTTPS part, because the HTTPS part tells the browser, the computer, that this is a URL, this is a web address. We are using the HTTP protocol. Not only that, we're using the HTTPS protocol, which is a more secure version of the HTTP protocol. So this is actually a URL. And you can see it because Visual Studio Code even put it underlined by default. And if I hover on it, it also tells me that with control click, I can follow the link. So it is recognized as a URL. Whereas if I remove the HTTPS part, there's still a graphical problem here because it looks like a link since it still has an underline, but I cannot follow the link anymore because it is a link. It is a link to something that doesn't exist. Okay, I'm changing things around, but I hope that you understood the gist. You can skip the secure part of HTTP as well. Bobby says you can just say HTTP, and he's probably right, although you will see that Google prefers HTTPS. So even if you say HTTP, you will be automatically redirected into the HTTPS version, which is something that we developers usually do. We don't want people to stumble upon the HTTP non-secure version. So whenever someone types HTTP, we just redirect them silently into the HTTPS, the more secure version. PNTM says, so does the www part consider redundant? What significance does it have? This is, I don't know if I can reply correctly, but so google.com is the domain inside of which we can have multiple things. For example, we could have, I don't know, docs.google.com is Google Documents, which is inside of the domain google.com. But we also have drive.google.com and we also have slides.google.com. So under the same name, google.com, you can have multiple web applications. And there is usually one application which is the default one, which is www. So www is usually used as the main website for that domain because google.com is not just a website, it's a company, it's $1 billion company, which provides multiple different applications. And, well, the main application, of course, is the search engine homepage. So they decided to, instead of creating something like search.google.com, they decided to have www, which is the main thing. Sometimes you don't even care about this www, and it's okay to just show users the homepage with just google.com without even typing www. But still, as you can see, I removed completely the www and Google is redirecting me to the www part. So it's all a matter of redirection. You type the URL wrong, but still Google will direct you to the proper website. And it's something that companies put up every single time. For example, if I look for facebook.com, so with just one O, I will probably be redirected to facebook.com with my own Facebook. You see? Why is that? Well, because Facebook doesn't want people that mistype the name to just get lost. So Facebook bought the domain Facebook and made it so that they can redirect you to the proper web application. So it's something that network administrators do in order to make the web more resilient. Whatever you type, it will just work. Bobby says, why does HTML search for a file in href? Shouldn't it be source? Or can I add a link as a file in a folder? What's the practical use for this? Okay. So you're talking about the src attribute, but the src attribute, if you remember, is available only for the image tag. And this is kind of strange, but it's like this. I don't know who created it like this, but it is like this, and it's very difficult to now update things without breaking backward compatibility. So image has an src, and the src, we put the profile.jpg file or something like that. But as I already mentioned some time ago, this is not the name of the file. Now you finally can be revealed the truth. This is not the file name. This is a file path. This is exactly like saying from this folder, go to profile JPG. So you can put any kind of relative or global path in here. You can even put a global path, such as, let me see my face on GitHub. This is my face, and I'm going to, no, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to copy the image address, and I'm gonna put it here. Let's see what happens. Oh, where am I? Did I close me? Oh no, I'm here. Ooh, this is my ugly face. As you can see, I did not put the file name. I don't even know what the file name is. I put the file URL. I put the file address, which can be local, just like in profile.jpg, which means starting from the current folder, go to profile.jpg, or it can be global, just like in this case. But the src attribute is only available for images, whereas links only have href. They don't have the src attribute. And in this href, you can put whatever you want, local paths or global paths. Okay? I hope that this explains what you asked. Okay, so this is a global path. We can go to another path, which is global, if I type it correctly, of course. And let's try some other URL. For example, how can I have a link on a local path then? I'm going to show you right now. Don't worry. So let's look for something. Let's look for something. Okay. Oh, there is a beautiful song by the Beatles called something. Okay, and this is the URL of this search. So I'm going to copy this URL and I'm going to put it here. It's a very ugly URL, but it should work. So if I go here, oh, I need to specify a text for this link. Search for something. And now I've got another link next to Google. And if I click on search for something, it goes exactly to the same page. So this is another absolute global URL. But as you can, because it starts with HTTPS, so it's going somewhere. But it's searching for something else. Probably most of the attributes that I see here are completely useless, and I could remove them. I could stick with just a Google search, and maybe let me see if there's a Q. Yep, Q something. Okay, so probably this will work, but I'm telling you this from experience. Probably this will still work if the URL looks like this. So Google search, question mark, Q equals to something. This is the only important parameter that I need. Let's see if this works. Yep, exactly the same. So other parameters are used by Google for something else that we don't care about right now. So, okay, these are two global URLs. What if I want to go to basic tags, so to the previous page? I can use global URLs in that case too. In fact, I can type the global URL of my website, which is currently http localhost. Localhost is a special name that tells me that this is my machine, and it's equivalent to 127.0.0.1. You remember this? There's no place like 127.0.0.1. There's no place like home. This is the IP address of my computer. But I can just use localhost, which is much easier to read and write. And I'm hosting the website on a local server that responds on port 5500, which I have to specify in the URL. So my server is this, http://localhost:5500/ and this is the root of my web server. So starting from here, I can type whatever file I need. For example, the file name of this file, which I can just copy, or I can just type it 00-basic-tags.html. Let's practice a little bit our accuracy. Basic tags is the title of the link. So this is not the reply to Bobby. I'm sorry, I'll get back to you. This is how to create a global link that points to another file in my same server. So global links are not used only for remote files, but also for local files. If I click on basic tags, it didn't work. And it didn't work probably because I also need to specify the folder I'm in. I'm sorry. So apparently the server is watching the whole Inglorious portfolio folder. So I have to go inside of this folder called 01HTML, and then inside of that folder I have to go into the HTML file. This should work. Yep, it worked. Okay, so I'm not saying that you should do this. Whenever you have local files and you want to point to those local files, this is not the proper way to do it. You can, but you shouldn't. Why you shouldn't? Well, because if I put this website on Netlify, then the absolute URL will not be localhost 5500 anymore. It will be something.netlify.com. So whenever you want to point local files, it's usually a good practice to not use absolute URLs. Sometimes you could need them, but usually you don't. And you want to point to relative paths, as Bobby is asking. So let's go to relative paths. I still wanted to show you all the different absolute paths. So you know what? I'm going to put also a heading, which says absolute URLs. Okay. And now I'm going to create another section here that will say relative URLs. Or if you don't want the term absolute, you can say global URLs. It's exactly the same thing. I'm using global here because the Ryan's tutorials page is using this term, global URLs. As for relative URLs, well, relative URLs are relative to where you are. So you cannot access Google relatively, of course, but you can access your local resources locally and relatively. How can you do that? You create an href, a link with an href that goes to basic tags. And this href is going to point to the file that is exactly in the same folder, in our case, of course, right? It's exactly in the same folder of links, which is the file that we are editing. So that's the reason why we can use either /, so starting from here, go to basic tags. And as you can see, Visual Studio Code was so nice to us as to understand what we want to do. Starting from this folder, he's listing all the available files, and we can select the files the file that we want. If we don't use the /, this has exactly the same meaning, but probably Visual Studio Code he's even able to help us in this case. So, okay, this is a local path. Not putting / is exactly the same as putting it. It means starting from here, where I am, go to this file. So this is proper. This is proper. And we can even go somewhere else. So if the root of this server is the Inglorious portfolio, this means that I can even go to some file that is inside of Crash Course. For example, the index. But how do I do this? Since Crash Course is a separate folder at the same level of my parent folder. So I can create a link. This link will go back to the Crash Course. And from this file, how do I go back one folder and into the Crash Course folder and into the index.html folder? Well, I know how to go back on the file system. It's ... And it's the same exact thing here with URLs, with addresses. So ... means go up one folder, which means that I'm not in 01HTML folder anymore. I'm in the parent folder. I'm in Inglorious portfolio. Starting from here, you see that Visual Studio Code is suggesting me from here I can go to any file or folder that is inside of this Inglorious portfolio folder, which means I can go to Crash Course, I can go to 01HTML, I can go to the file called license or readme. I'm going to go to Crash Course. And inside of Crash Course, I can go to the about section, I can go to fix me HTML, index HTML, profile JPEG, style CSS, whatever I want. I'm going to go to index HTML. So as you can see, this is a more complex address, but it's a valid URL address. Starting from here, go back one folder, go to that folder, go to that file. And this should work out of the box. So this is what we have now. And in relative URLs, we can go to basic tags this way, we can go to basic tags this way, and we can go to crash course. See? Kind of works. I hope that this is a reply to Bobby's questions. Probably. And the same goes with images. You know that images have this attribute, which is src. It's not href. Image is the only one, for now at least, that has this attribute called src instead of href. And this follows exactly the same convention. Do I want to put my profile image here? Well, there is a profile image here, but it's on another folder. It's in the crash course. Well, if I want, I can use it. I can go back one folder from here, I can go to the 00 crash course folder here, and then I can go to the profile JPEG image from here. And now I see my ugly face twice, because one time I got it absolutely, and the second time I got it relatively. Bobby says, yes, I didn't understand a link as a web link, not just a local path, but this was my bad. Okay, that's cool. Awesome. Another thing that I already told you, but it's good to rehearse it, is that you remember this index.html? This is a special file name, because you can go to the index.html, or you can go to the folder that contains the index.html without specifying the file name. Index.html is the default HTML file that will be opened by the browser whenever you visit a directory. So you can even type it as /00 crash course without specifying the file, because if you specify a folder, the browser will say, okay, but this is a folder, what file should I open? Ooh, there's an index.html, so I'm gonna open that file. And this will probably just work. Crash course, if I click on it, it goes to the folder called 00 crash course, as you can see from the address bar, not index.html, but implicitly it's going into the file called index.html. Okay, this is something that we already saw a couple of times before, so it shouldn't be too new to you. Okay, so these are global URLs and relative URLs. They are not strictly tied to images and links. You can put relatives and global URLs for links, for images, and even for style sheets, you will see. Let's see what else we've got. Oh, email links, etc., etc. So now we understand what are relative links and global links. Should I use absolute or relative? It depends. It depends a lot. And here are some good suggestions about what should you use, absolute or relative. I would say that in general, apart from some exceptions, if you have resources that are local in your project, in your web server, you should pretty much always use relative URLs. If you're instead accessing some external resource, well, in that case, you are forced to use a global URL. Let's call it like this. You can link within pages, and we already know how to do that. There's also this tag name, which I never saw before. Oh, yeah, I know it. Okay, yeah, this could be interesting to see right now. Yeah, why not? Okay, there could be different sections in your page. For example, in this case, we've got an H1, which describes this section about global URLs, and we've got this other H1, which describes a section to another URLs. You know what? I'm going to do a little refactor, as we say, where I'm going to create an H1, which is links, and I'm going to call those H2s, so they are subheadings, just like we did in the previous file. I think this is organizes the document better. We have a huge title that describes the document, and then we've got two separate sections that are separated with these two subheadings. Now, one thing that the tutorial there is suggesting is that we can specify an ID attribute to a specific section, to a specific heading, or to a specific tag in general. So let's put an ID here, and I'm going to call it global URLs. Okay, I'm using the kebab case convention, right? So everything is lowercase, separated by a dash, because this is going to become part of the URL that you see in the address bar. What do I do with this ID? Well, the thing is that now I can create a special link here. I'm going to type it here, separated a little bit from the rest. I'm going to call it global URLs, just like the title that I see here. And this will be a special link that will not lead me anywhere outside of this page. In fact, I will stay in the same page, but I will go directly to a specific section of my page. What use does it have? Well, if you know a website called Wikipedia, this does it a lot. In fact, if I go to any page on Wikipedia, for example, Shigeru Miyamoto, I love this guy. I was really lucky to find Shigeru Miyamoto on the front page. So, well, actually, this is the page of Super Mario World, which is one of the best games around, created by Shigeru Miyamoto. So, Super Mario World is an article in Wikipedia with lots of information, and then we've got a table of contents. And the table of contents shows me all the different sections that I have here. Well, if I click on Legacy, this is a link that is not going to a different page of this website. It's going in the same page of the website, but it's going to scroll down to this section, which is Legacy. So I'm going to click here, and you see I'm on the same page as before, but I scroll down to the Legacy section. And you can see that the URL now is exactly the same as before, but it adds this piece here, which is hash legacy. Hash legacy, well, the hash separates the URL, the address of my website, to the ID of this section. So apparently they put hidden an ID to this header, and now I can use the ID as part of the URL. If you don't believe me, I'm going to inspect this page. I'm going back to the legacy part. Wait a second. Magic. I'm going to, okay, yeah, this is legacy. I'm going to click on here, and now I can try to inspect this thing here, which apparently is an H2 with a span inside of it. And I never mentioned the tag called span, and I'm going to do it in a while. But as you can see, this span has an ID, and the ID is legacy with a capital L. This is exactly what you are seeing here as part of the URL. So there is a feature in HTML that allows you to create a table of contents such as this one. Where is it? And the table of contents can be a series of links that point to different parts of the same page. So hyperlinks that don't go to a separate page, they go to different sections of the same page. And that's what we are going to do here. So if we have global URLs as an ID of this H2, and I want to link that allows me to go directly into this section, I can write this as a URL, global or relative. I think that relative is much simpler. And I think that in order to make it work in the easiest way possible, I think that we can just start with hash global URLs, which means starting from the current URL, just go to that ID. I think it works. Not sure, but let's try. So I'm here in links. Where's my... Wait a second, because I cannot find my link. So it should be global URLs. It should be here. And I cannot see it. The reason why I cannot see it, it's probably because this is not working. But let me check again. So it should be next to crash course, and in next to crash course I don't see anything at all. So yeah, probably this is not actually working. Let's see what the tutorial says. Okay, it says that it should work. Otherwise I can just type it like this. So the full name of the page plus the hashtag and then the ID. I don't know. Let's try something else. Let's try the whole page. So starting from here, I'm going to links, and then from here I'm going to go to global URLs. Does this work better? Nope, not at all. Oh, it works for you guys. Oh, now it works here. So if I go here, okay, I'm now to global URLs. So you know what? I think that the problem was just a refreshing problem. So this works, but this should work too with just a local thing here. Let's see if this works. Okay, yeah, it works. So it was just a refreshing problem on my live server. Works for me too, but doesn't direct correctly, says Angelo, which means that probably you have a small typo somewhere. So the H2 should have an ID attribute, and the ID attribute has an ID that you can just copy and paste inside of the link to make sure that you are copying exactly the same ID. Maybe you typed global URL without the final S, or you used another convention like camel case instead of kebab case, or I don't know, you didn't put the hashtag in front of it, or something like that. Just watch out for any typos that you created, and if you cannot find it, please post a screenshot of your code, and we can see it together on Slack, that I can open back again because I chatted with my friend who's still isolated due to coronavirus. Forgot the hashtag. Okay, cool, awesome. I love how you guys make mistakes and find the mistakes by yourselves. This is really, really good, a good practice. Okay, so this is another cool feature that we have. We can jump into different sections of the same page through this hashtag. We can also create different kinds of links. For example, if we use the mail to protocol, this is a cool thing because it will open your email client, your default email client, and will will allow you to start typing an email to that address. I used it on my website. In fact, on my website, I've got this link here, which is very small, but this link here, if you look at the address on the bottom left, it says mail to : and my email address. You can even create telephone links. And if you see, the address on the bottom left says tel : and my phone number. Please don't use it badly. The other links that I see here instead are all absolute links, because this is a link to my Facebook, to the Inglorious Coders Facebook page, to the Instagram page, to the GitHub, to LinkedIn. These must be absolute links. Whereas every other link here is a link to some other sections of my website, so it's probably implemented as a relative link, even if I see it on the bottom left as an absolute link. But if I inspect this link, I will probably see it as a relative link. Well, actually, it's a strange relative link. Look at that. It's /how/. So the trailing slash means that this is a folder, and I will probably go to the index HTML of this folder. But you see, it has... Oh, I clicked. You see, it has also a leading slash. So this looks like an absolute path on the file system. In fact, this is something that I probably forgot to tell you. There is a difference between global URLs, relative URLs, and also, yeah, we can call them absolute URLs, which is probably kind of stupid as a word, but an absolute URL here is the same thing as a relative URL, but with an absolute path. What am I saying? I'm saying this: if I now create another link to basic tags, for example, I want to go to basic tags, but this time, so the file is called like this, 00 basic tags, and this is the relative link, absolute way. This is the relative link, but I can say, starting from the root of this web server, which actually is the same as saying starting from the root of the Inglorious portfolio folder in this case. So starting from the root of this server, I can go inside of the folder called 01HTML, and from there we can go to basic tags. So as you can see, this is not a global URL. It's not global because it doesn't start with HTTP or HTTPS. So it's still relative since it still starts from my own server. It's local, it's not global. But it starts absolutely from the root of the server, which is not exactly the same as the root of my file system. It's the root of what the server is exposing to the world. So starting from the root of the web server, which is in my case exactly the folder called Inglorious Portfolio, you can go, just like with an absolute path, into these other folders and files. And you can do the same thing to go to the crash course, for example. Let's do another link. Let's call this basic tags absolute way, and let's call this crash course the absolute way. I'm running out of words. And from here, we can start from the root of the web server. We can go into crash course. And from here, you can just go into fix me, index, profile, or just nothing, because we know that if you go to a folder, you will go automatically into the index HTML of that folder. So this works exactly the same. It's these are basic tags absolute way, and this is crash course absolute way. As you can see, it's a very slight nuance. It is still a relative URL, but it's absolute, which means that I'm not starting from the current directory and going up one directory or anything. I'm starting absolutely from the root of my web server. Okay, I think I've said everything about links, even too much. I didn't want to go too much in detail. In fact, I think you got a notification about the fact that this lesson would have been about CSS, and instead we're still inside of the HTML realm. So let's go a little further. There's also a title. I probably already told you about titles in links. There's so many things that you can do. But if I put a title here, let's go to Google. This title will result in probably being able to hover on Google and see that title in a tooltip. I think that I already told you this, so let's go on. Images. You know how to display an image. You know how to use images, all the different file types. There are some tips that you can see. I suggest you to look yourselves at the reference in order to see if there anything that is more than what we already saw. The image tag is an image tag with an attribute which is not href for some reason, it's src, but just for images. And we can also put an alternative text in case the image cannot be shown for some reason, or for the visually impaired, so for accessibility reasons. You know, this is a local path, of course, and you know what local paths are. It's exactly the same thing. And yeah, here they are already fiddling around with width and height, and you can see what happens when fiddling around with width and height. The image could be also stretched if you're not careful. There are some tips about using images, and I'm not going to tell you anything about this because I think that you're already able to understand it by yourself, or you already know it. There are so many different image types. You know more than me. JPG, PNG, GIF, or for someone, GIF, which can also be an animated picture, and 9gaggers know about GIFs. And okay, so we've got some tips about images, such as don't put images that are too big, because an image that is too big will weigh a lot. You can have images that weigh 3 megabytes, 10 megabytes. And if I'm on a cell phone with a very basic connection, it could be difficult for me to download that image, or it could wipe out all my data plan. So try to always load into your website images that are big enough, not too big, but also not too small, because if you put an image that is really, really small and you try to make it big, you will see the pixels. It will look pixelated. So try the right mean between big enough and small enough. And yeah, let's just go on with that. Lists. This is a new HTML tag that I never mentioned. You can create ordered lists, so lists that have numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can also create unordered lists, which are bullet lists. How do you do this? Very easy. I'm going to put it in a new HTML file. So I'm going to create a 02 lists HTML, and in this HTML5 file, lists. I know that I'm going really, really fast, but bear with me. You will become that fast too, even faster than me. So don't worry. Just eat pasta and you will code faster, right? So I'm waiting a little bit so you are able to create this file and to create the usual boilerplate code for this HTML file. In the meantime, I'm going to put some extra things that are not needed. For example, an H1 that tells lists. And while you're still creating this lists file and creating the boilerplate, I'm also going to show that file on the web browser. So 02lists.html. Yep, okay, I'm in the correct page. Are you with me? Can I proceed creating lists? We done, Chief? Okay. Hopefully everybody, every one of the 11 viewers and also the offline viewers, because I saw many people watching the recordings. And, I envy you guys if you're watching the recordings, because doing this thing live could be a little more entertaining probably, but watching the recording, 4 hours of recording should be so boring. Well, of course, you can go forward if you want to skip some sections, but I would never be able to watch 4 hours of me talking. That would be annoying so much. How did you organize your folders one under the other in Visual Studio Code? Mine are shown on a single row. I'm not really sure what you're meaning. Could you please send me a screenshot of that? Because I don't have folders one inside of the other. The only thing that I have is my Inglorious Portfolio project with the 2 folders inside of it. Oh, wait a second. I think I understand what you're talking about. So there is a strange thing in which I can, if I remove everything from the workspace, okay, I have an empty workspace, and now I can add a folder to this workspace, and sometimes it shows in a special way, sometimes it doesn't. For example, you probably see some, well, probably not like this. Let me check again. I'm going to select Inglorious Portfolio. You're probably, nope. How do I do this? I would like to mimic exactly the same thing that you have, but it's not working in my case. Let's see if no, right click here, no. Okay, well, the thing is this. Sometimes you add a folder to the workspace and you don't see that folder, you just see its contents. And sometimes you see the folder with all its contents inside. It shouldn't bother you too much. So really don't worry about that. It's just 2 different ways of viewing the same thing. Let's see. Okay, you probably see this. You probably see it like this. Is it so? There's a slight delay when streaming, so you probably hear my voice 5 seconds later. So I still need to do a Mississippi 1, Mississippi 2, Mississippi 3, Mississippi 4 in order to wait for your answer. Probably you see something like this, and as you can see, it's not a big deal. It still is the same thing. You have the Inglorious portfolio folder as the root folder. It's not even listed in the file system, and you're still able to do everything you need just like before. So nothing new here. And yeah, it's just 2 different ways to organize the same thing. I think that if you add instead another folder to the workspace, so for example, let me put git good, then in that case, everything transforms. Oh, I see. Okay, so Bobby was saying a completely different thing. He says, I see it like 00 crash course /01 dash HTML. The reason why you see this is just that Visual Studio Code is trying to help you visualize things in a better way. So for example, I'm going to create things here and I'm going to remove them. So don't do this with me. I'm going to create a new folder here. I'm going to call it new folder. And inside of this folder, I'm going to create a new file. Okay, it's not working as expected. Sometimes you will see that this hierarchical structure is instead shown just like you are saying, as if it was on one line. And it's just a more convenient way to show you things, but it's not mandatory. Let me move around this new folder. What happens if I move it here? Still no dice. No, I cannot emulate the same thing that you have. I'm sorry. Sometimes I see the structure that you're saying, and sometimes not. In this case, not. But you don't need to worry. It's just a different kind of visualization, and it's probably much more convenient in your case. So I'm sorry if I cannot help you right now, but we will go back to this. I will do my research if you're interested. Let's go back to lists. We have a new file called lists. And it's an HTML file. We can start writing lists inside of it. So I already told you that we can create ordered lists with numbers and unordered lists, which are bullet points. So an ordered list is a tag called OL, ordered list. And inside of the OL, we can have list items, which are a new kind of tag. I am not worried. I dislike it. Ha ha ha. Okay. And if you dislike it, you can look at Visual Studio Code, hierarchic visualization of files and I have no idea how to formulate this question. But I think that I got it. Tree indent. No, not really. Okay, we will see it later. If you don't like it, we will make sure that we can get rid of that kind of visualization. So the ordered list is a list that contains list items, so LIs. So what do I like more? Do I like more JavaScript? JavaScript is the best one. Then I like Python as a programming language. And then my third choice will be, oh, that's hard. No real, you know what? I'm going to call CoffeeScript. Because I used to love CoffeeScript and type a lot of CoffeeScript, but then for some reason, TypeScript got it better. But I still love CoffeeScript deep inside. So these are my 3 favorite languages. And how do I visualize them? I don't, because my workspace, my editor was restarted. So I need to probably start again the live server. You don't need to do that, but I had to. Okay, so let me close a few things here that are not really important. And here is my ordered list. So as you can see, I can create a list that says 1, 2, and 3. I can even add a description here with a paragraph. My top 3 languages. Here they are. Okay, so this list, as you can see, has some spacing too, which makes it more readable. But I also can create unordered list, and you just create a UL. U stands for unordered, and L stands for list. And inside of the unordered list, you can still create list items. So you use the same tag for ordered lists and for unordered lists. So here we can type whatever list we want that doesn't even need any order, any sorting, any ordering. For example, I don't know what I like. I like pasta. I like pizza. And I also love the mandolin. Because, of course, Italians are all pasta, pizza, and mandolin. Or pasta, pizza, and mafia, whatever. Probably we are more into mafia than mandolin. I never saw anyone, any Italian, playing the mandolin. But still, let's go with peaceful things. Pasta, pizza, and mandolin. Okay? So this is an unordered list. I don't prefer pasta or pizza or mandolin. This is not my top 3. I like the 3 of them. And of course, I don't like mafia. So I'm not putting mafia here. And here I can put another paragraph that tells me, I don't know, things I like. Okay, these are the things I like. Pasta, pizza, and mandolin. Because as an Italian, of course, I like these 3. There's also many other things, but what do you know? Okay, pasta, pizza, and pineapples. Yeah, of course. No, I'm not part of that current that says no, pineapples is atrocious. What do they say in that other YouTube channel? Oh my God, they say that it's sacrilegious. They say it in the violin channel. I'm sorry, I don't remember that. But still, okay, so these are unordered lists and ordered lists. But you know what? You can even put ordered lists inside of ordered lists, unordered lists inside of other unordered lists, and even combinations of those. In fact, for example, I can say, yes, I like pizza, but there are 3 kinds of pizza that I like most. So I love the pizza with sausage and mushrooms. This is my favorite. I'm sorry, I'm messing up. This is an ordered list in which I have to create list items. Sorry. Sometimes I do mistakes too. Why not? Just to keep your attention. Okay, so this is an ordered list inside of a list item of an unordered list. And inside of this ordered list, it's difficult to say, even worse than she sells seashells on the seashore. We've got this list item that is my favorite kind of pizza. And then I'll put my second favorite kind of pizza, which is 4 cheeses. I don't know if we call it like this, but it's 4 different kinds of cheese. And then my least favorite kind of pizza will be, you know what, pineapples. I never even tasted the pineapples pizza. But you know what, I'm not against pineapple pizza per se, because we Italians have a tradition of some plates, some dishes that are both salty and sweet. For example, especially in Rome, we love to eat, in every part of Italy, we used to eat ham and melon together, or ham and figs. Or, we've got this kind of thing. So I'm not really against pineapples in pizza. If it's good, why not? Of course, it's not an Italian recipe, at least this. Just like that Italian cook says, if my grandma had wheels, she would have been a bike. Yes, if you put any non-orthodox ingredient inside of an Italian recipe, that's not an Italian recipe anymore. Maybe it's good, but it's not Italian. Can you do hierarchies within ordered lists, like, for example, 1.11.11.2 and so on? Yes, you can. In fact, we're going to do this. So, as you can see, we have pizza, and we have 3 different kinds of pizzas inside of here. But we can have different kinds of ordered lists, and we can try, for example, pineapples, ordered list. And inside of this ordered list, I will say it's salty, it's sweet, maybe it's also a bit sour. I don't know, but I believe that pineapple could have a sour flavor. Maybe that's what really bugs us Italian. It's not the sweetness, because, well, melons are sweet, but it's the sour that it's in pineapples that probably is not that good in our minds, at least. But probably very few Italians tasted pineapple pizza. So in that case, okay, we've got this kind of nested list, but it's not exactly what Angelo was asking. Can you adjust the indentation space for the list? Can I adjust the indentation space? Oh, you mean the indentation between the number and the text, or between the lists? Something like that? You can adjust everything, anything you want through CSS. And replying to Angelo, yes, it would be so much better if we had 1.1, or sorry, in this case 3.1, 3.2, 3.3. And you can, but through CSS, as always. So yeah, you can. This is how you structure lists and nested lists. But as for styling, you always style with CSS. Almost always. There's another thing that you can, however, define, more than one. So let me check the tutorial again. So about lists, this is what we've done already. And, well, this is very similar to what we've done. Yeah, we can create different kinds of lists. I never used this one. These are the values that you can use for ordered lists. So A is the alphanumeric, so you can have lists that are ordered, but instead of numbers, they use A, B, or C, or uppercase numeric, or you can use Roman literals with the type I, or uppercase Roman numerals with the capital I. Let's try it. I never saw it. OL type capital I. Because I come from Rome, so I have to use Roman numerals. Okay, here they are. Yeah, it works. Not really sure that it's a good thing to have them aligned, justified on the right. I don't like it that much, but still, we can use that. What else can we do? Oh, as for unordered lists, you saw that we are showing them as bullet points, but we can also use circle bullets, so empty bullets, or square bullets if you like them more. Let's try to use a square bullet for an unordered list. We just have one unordered list, and I'm going to type, what was that? Square. So in this case, we have to type a whole word instead of just one character, apparently. And this is it. We've got square bullets. But again, this relates to styling, and I'm pretty confident that this kind of style, you can do it in CSS. So I would never suggest you to use this special attributes to lists. And you can play with the order. Probably this is really important instead. So you can decide what number to start with. So for example, if for any reasons we want pineapples, this salty, sweet and sour, to not start from 1, but to start from, I don't know, 10, we can probably say something like, hey, you, OL, start from 10. And what happens is that the list will start from 10 to 11 to 12. Why should I use this? Well, it's really convenient for some purposes. For example, this thing here. Let's start at the beginning. Ichi, ni, and san. And now, for something completely different, we continue the list with los, vag, and jav. As you can see, you are forced in HTML to create 2 separate ordered lists if you want to put a paragraph in between, but you can resume counting with this start attribute. Pretty convenient. And you can even reverse the order if you use this attribute reversed. And you can see that this attribute has no value. It's just placing the attribute without saying reversed equal to something. There are some attributes, and we will see them, that don't need any value. You just place them and they have a meaning. Usually we call them Boolean values. So it's either true or not true. It's either true or false. So if you don't put this attribute, then the list is not reversed. But if you put the attribute, then the list is reversed. So true instead of false. There's just two possible values, either true or false. You can interrupt the order with this other thing on the list item. Value 9 means that you can create a list which contains 1, 2, 3, and then you skip all the other numbers up to 99 and finally 100. If you like it, or if you don't like it, you don't use it. It's so many things. I'm not going to test every single thing here because you already know how to document yourselves on this, and you can experiment yourselves. So this is what I'm going to ask you for the next week. Just read these tutorials, find something that is interesting to you, and try them yourselves. If I had to do this during these lessons, we will go really, really slow in doing something that you're already able to do yourself. Instead, I would like to give you all the tools that you can have to start learning by yourselves. Yeah, I'm giving you the tools to learn instead of just teaching you every single thing passively. Okay, so this is about lists. We also have another special kind of list, which is the definition list. And I don't really care about this. Just go inside the tutorial and see what this definition list is about. I'm going to show you a glimpse of this. Definition list is a DL with DT and DD. So it's very different from a usual list. And it will result in this. It's like a list of definitions. The internet, the reason you are failing your classes. Or in this case, you are actually advancing your classes, right? Tomorrow, a mystical place where 99% of human productivity and motivation is stored. Octopus, a cat with 8 legs. Really? Okay, so this is a definition list. And if you want to know how to use it, you don't even need to memorize it. You just go to definition list HTML. You Google it, you find some documentation, you apply this documentation. The only thing that you need to know by heart is the name of the thing that you want to create. So you have to know that definition lists exist. And then whenever you want to use a definition list, you just need to remember that it's called definition list. So you can Google it and use it right away. Okay, so it's much more important to remember the names of the things rather than how to use them, because how to use them is exactly the same way you use every other HTML tags. Once you know how to use an HTML tag, you know how to use all of them. There's another special HTML tag which is called a table, which is not this kind of table. A table is some sort of grid-like structure which allows you to, well, create tables with rows. TR is a table row. With a TD, I don't remember what this is, but it's a table column. It's a table cell. I don't remember why it's D. And TH is table header, so you can create headers on tables. And you can even divide tables into a heading, a body, a header, a body, and a footer. You can make some columns span multiple rows or multiple columns with an attribute called colspan and rowspan. And this is another thing that you can just look at yourself without writing code right now. But then, as soon as the lesson is over, during the following week, I would like you guys to try and create a table yourself. So the table structure is a structure like this one, is a very nested structure in which you can have table with a table row, and the table row contains 2 cells, this TD. D stands for data, so it's not table cell, it's table data, but it's a cell. And this is a very complex table with 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. And every row has 3 cells, 3 table data, including the first row, which has 3 table headers. So this apparently, if I try to understand what this table is about, has 3 cells on the top, 3 headings, which gives me the movie, the year, and the quote. And then in every following row, we've got the title of the movie, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, the year it was issued, and a quote, well, sure turn me into a newt, etc., etc. Is it true? Let's see. Yes, this is the table that we are going to come up with if we just copy and paste the code into an HTML document. Okay? We can even group some headers, some rows or some columns. In fact, I already mentioned table heads, table bodies, and even table footers. What does it do? Well, nothing. But from a structure point of view, the structure of the table is it tells me a different story. And maybe you can even style the table in different ways. If you're in the table head, you will style the table head in a different way rather than the footer. You can use this col span or row span attribute to make the cell span multiple rows or columns. For example, we've got rows here that have multiple 3 columns each. But in this particular row, we want only 1 column that spans 3 whole columns. And this other situation here, we've got only 2 columns. The first one spans its own column, but the second one spans 2 columns. So the final result is always to have the width of 3 columns. But in this case, we have only 1 cell spanning 3 columns. Here we've got 3 cells spanning 3 columns. And here we've got 2 cells spanning 1 column and 2 columns respectively. Let's see what happens. Here it is. So the first row has 1 cell spanning 3 columns. These other span only 1 column each. And this has 1 cell spanning 1 column and this other spanning 2 columns, right? And we've got the same thing for row span. So we can use row spans on TDs, and this is the final result. I'm not going to show you the whole code. So tables are really, really convenient. They are so convenient that in early days of HTML, someone decided, hey, you know what? I can structure my whole website through tables. It is so easy to create a table that contains the heading, the header of my website, the footer of my website, maybe even a cell that contains the navigations link aside. And many web developers in the early days used tables, maybe styled a little better, in order to have complex website structures that have things spanning in multiple directions, a complex structure on your website. This resulted to be a really, really bad practice. I'm not going to say too much about why this is a bad practice, but let's say 2 things. First of all, the table has structure in HTML. But if you want to lay out your website with a header, a footer, a navigation thing, etc., that's not really structure. That's more like style. So, of course, you have a header, you have a footer, you have a body. But the fact that the header is on top of the body and the body is on top of the footer, or there's a navigation link on the navigation menu on the left, well, that's more like a styling thing. And tables also have a very complex structure. So whenever you need to create a cell, you cannot just create a cell. You have to create a cell inside of a row, inside of a table, and in more complex scenarios, you have to also put a cell inside of a row, inside of a body, inside of a table. So it's a very, very complex structure. And finally, nowadays we've got phones, and phones require our websites to be responsive. Tables are not responsive at all because tables have that structure, and that structure will never change even if you stretch your browser window. So if you have a complex website that has a navigation menu on the left and the body on the center, and you squeeze the website inside a phone browser, you will see the navigation bar, the body, very narrow, and it will be almost impossible to read what they have inside. In fact, in responsive designs, we prefer maybe to have the navigation menu become a hamburger menu with a drawer, a hidden drawer that you can open and close. Or you can have the navigation menu as, I don't know, a button that you can click and it shows you something that pops up, or something like that. Let's see this website. I'm going to show you this website because it's a website that I created, and I tried to make it as responsive as possible. Okay, so this is the website of a photographer, as you can see, and it has things going on here. Of course, there's a lot of things going on. What happens if I want to see it on a mobile phone? This is the menu that you see here below. There's a home menu. I don't know if you can see it. I make it big. Home, reviews, portfolio, stories, blog, contacts. This works well on a desktop browser, but on a mobile browser, maybe there's not enough room to put all these menu items on the same line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, mimic a mobile phone with this kind of button that we have in the developers tools. And now you can see that the structure of our website is completely different. We have this hamburger icon. It's called hamburger probably because it reminds of a hamburger. And if you click on it, you will see this kind of menu, and you can close the menu. So it's sort of a drawer, right? So as you can see, it's completely different, and you cannot achieve this with tables because tables have that structure, and that structure will never change. Instead, with other means that I will show you, you can completely change the structure of your website depending on the size of the screen. Okay, so don't use tables other than the purpose of the tables. So if you need some tabular data, then use a table. But if you want to lay out your website, don't use tables, use whatever I'm going to teach you in the following lessons, okay? So this is all about tables. And another really bad thing about Ryan's tutorials is that they don't mention another important aspect of HTML, which is forms. I don't know if they made it... No, there's nothing about forms. Very bad, Ryan. Please add something about forms, because forms are really, really important in HTML. So in my slides, I said, read the reference material and do the activities at the bottom of each page as practice. Build your CV as an HTML document if you want. You can discover how HTML forms work by searching for online resources by yourselves. But you know what? We can do this together. Then if you want, you can build your website as multiple HTML pages linked to each other, which you already kind of did during the crash course, so probably you don't need to do that. And remember, starting from HTML to CSS and also JavaScript, you can also start going to another very, very good resource that is out there, completely free online. It's called Free Code Camp. Free Code Camp has lots of online interactive tutorials. So you read some text and then you start going to the lessons that tell you a little bit of things here. You have to type some HTML, CSS or JavaScript code. You can see the results of your code on the right. And if you run the tests, it will tell you if you performed correctly or not, and it will show you the output of your test here below. The cool thing about Free Code Camp is that it's really well done, it's interactive, it's free, and if you sign in and do all the lessons from all the tutorials, you are going to obtain some sort of certifications. I don't know if these certifications are actually important, used, or we couldn't find path. Okay, there's already an error. Nice. Still, I don't know if these certifications are really, really useful for you. If these certifications can be valuable and reliable for a recruiter. but I would still probably suggest you to try these things. As you can see, I happen to do all the exercise on basic JavaScript except one, maybe this one. But you have multiple tutorials here about pretty much everything. I think there is some HTML web development thing there here. Coding interview prep too. Some of them are really advanced. I would love to see, okay, responsive web design certification. You see, I did everything apart from responsive web design projects. And if I complete this, I will probably have a certification about responsive web design. Bobby says, I don't think they are, as you can basically copy-paste your way throughout the entire thing. And yes, I agree with you. And probably that is the reason why they have this last responsive web design projects. In fact, it's true what you say, Bobby. You can copy-paste from some pre-made solution and run through all the tutorials and pretend that you did everything by yourself. But still, the last step to these certifications is to, I think, upload your project, which will be evaluated by someone, and then only then you will get a certification. I'm not sure about that. In fact, you see, I didn't even try. But still, I think they are working on some kind of reliability of these certifications. Otherwise, you can just stick with me. And, well, of course, apart from doing Free Code Camp, which I still suggest you to do, you can stick with me. You can build your portfolio together with me. You can work by yourselves during the week. You can share your work with me, and I can look at your code, and everybody else can look at your code, and maybe we can, start working together on things, which is much better. And one day, maybe the Inglorious certificate, which will have some reliability for some. It already has. I mean, some of my students just say my name, just mention my name during the interviews. Maybe some recruiters know my name, and this is already a good recommendation. Hey, I was trained by this guy. One day, maybe this will become global. Now it works mostly in the Italian/European environment. Okay, so please do some HTML exercises, and let's do something about forms also, because I think that forms are quite complex, and probably you need a little bit of more guidance about forms. You know what a form is. For example, a login form, a registration form, or give me your personal data form, okay? So forms are really important whenever you need to ask the user for input, not just clicking on links and showing images. And Ryan's tutorials doesn't have a section about forms. Free Code Camp, I think, has a section about forms. And W3 Schools has some information about forms, but this is not really a tutorial. W3 Schools just tells you things. It doesn't guide you through creating forms. That's where I shine. So let's create a new file here. I'm going to call it 03forms.html, and I'm going to create an HTML5 template here, boilerplate, forms. And now we are ready. After an H1 about forms, we are ready to talk about forms. I'm going to wait for you guys, of course, to do the same. As you can see, it's pretty mechanic. You always have to create a file with a special convention in my case, and then you create the boilerplate with this emmet IntelliSense, and then you start typing. And that's it. In the meantime, I'm going to the browser and open the forms. Let me close things. And let me go to 03-forms.html. Okay, ready to roll. So, if you're good with forms, you can start right away. Yeah, let's go. So, how do you create a form? You create a tag called form. And that's it. Inside of a form, you can have multiple kinds of input fields, which are called input. And input are those kind of tags that can auto-close or even not even close. There are a few tags that behave like this. We already saw the image tag. We already saw the HR tag. We even saw the meta tag here on the head. And then we've got inputs. Inputs do not need to be closed or can be auto-closed in the same tag. Inputs have lots of attributes, and we will see some of them. Let's say that this input is for the username, and then we've got another input for the password, okay? And how do I know that this is the username and the password? Well, we can place labels next to these inputs, which is probably what W3 Schools does. Yeah, there's a label here, first name, colon, right? And you can type on these forms, of course, on these inputs. And whenever you use an input tag, this input is already typable. But you also see a button, a submit button. How do you create a button? Well, in the early days, it was another kind of input, a special kind of input with a type of submit, because it's a submit button. Nowadays, I usually prefer not to use this input anymore, so I'm going to wipe it out. Because there is a relatively new kind of tag, which is button. And this is a button. But, sorry for the tongue twister here, but buttons can be of multiple types. We can have regular buttons or submit buttons. Submit buttons are those buttons that if you click them, you are submitting the form. So I actually lied to you. I created an input of type submit, which is true, but there was also an input of type button, which used to be relative to the regular button. Now, in order to tell the difference between regular buttons and submit buttons, we can create buttons like this, or button of type submit, which are special buttons that submit the form. So we're going to use a button of type submit here. Inputs do not have a content, so you don't need to close the input. You have multiple attributes, and we are going to type some of the attributes. Buttons instead have a content, which is the label that you put inside of the button. So you can say login inside of here, and you will see the text login as a label inside of the button. Let me see if this works. I'm going to the forms. Yep, I see that the inputs are one next to the other, and then there's a button that says login. So as you can see, the button tag is a regular tag, which can contain some text, and the text is the label that I see in the button. If you prefer, you can even, of course, format the button as you wish. You can put the login like this on a new line, because it has no real difference from the browser perspective. If you prefer it like this, you can place it like this. Otherwise, you can have it in one single line. As for inputs, as you can see, they are quite anonymous. You can start typing things inside of them, but they don't tell you what they are about. So here you can use another tag called label, and the label is going to write some label for the input. So this could be the username, and I'm going to create another label here for the password. Okay, label for the input, label for the password, and finally the button. You can even, of course, add some spacing. So you can tell apart, this is the label, this is the input for the username. This is the label, this is the input for the password. And finally, this is the submit button. This spacing is useful only for us developers, not for the rendering, because it's exactly the same for the browser. What do I have here now? Okay, that's pretty bad. I've got username and next to it the input and then password. And then the input was probably too big to stay in there. So it went to a new line. And even being attached to the other input, which is kind of ugly. And then we've got the login button next to it. It's pretty ugly here. And if I want to make it a little more similar to this one, I could probably use an old friend, which is the BR tag, which allows me to break the line. And I can put break lines everywhere. I can put a break line after the label. So I have the label, go to a new line, and I've got the input. then a break again. I can put this BR wherever I want. But as you can imagine, this is more related to styling. So I'm probably not fond of this method, but since we haven't seen any CSS yet, I think that I'm going to stick with this for now. Bobby says, isn't there a way to add description inside the boxes? Once clicked, it would disappear, of course. Yes, what you're saying as description is called a placeholder. And as you can see, it's really, really important to know the correct names. So the only thing that I need you guys to remember from my lessons is the name of things. Remember that the description inside of the input is called placeholder. Once you know this, you can Google it away and you are going to use it. So as you can see, now we've got BRs everywhere, and now it's a little better than before. Maybe the login is still too attached to the preceding input, and I can put another BR if I want, but I don't want to. Let's put a placeholder. I think that we are now mature enough to put placeholders. The placeholder is an attribute that I put inside of the input, so I can call it placeholder, and this is an attribute with a value. So I can type whatever I want here. For example, I can say example. For example, type any username, Super Mario Fam. Okay, this is a valid username. And if I type it like this, look at that. The placeholder is a grayed out text that shows and it disappears as soon as I type things, which is exactly what Bobby was asking for. It's called placeholder. And you can find it here too, a placeholder. And we can say, for example, you can type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Don't use this as a password, but you can still use it as a placeholder. Okay, so this is a placeholder. What else? Inputs can have multiple types. This is a text input. In fact, there's an implicit attribute here that is type of text. And it doesn't do anything more than what we had before. But there are other kinds of inputs. In fact, there's a specific type of input for passwords, for example. And if I say that this is an input of type password, it will behave slightly differently. Now, if I type on username, it's exactly the same as before. But if I type on password, ooh, hidden from you. Okay? So that's how you achieve an input of type password, just by adding a specific attribute to the input. And there are so many other type attributes out there. You can create a, type button, because we already saw what this is about, but you can create inputs of type checkbox. So checkboxes are something that you can turn on and off. You can have radio inputs, which are similar to checkboxes, but usually radio buttons are, as we say, mutually exclusive, which means that if you check on one radio, the other radio buttons will be checked off, right? And this is a little more complex, so we're going to look at it later on. We've got color types, which, depending on the browser, will... No, I don't want to save this password. Depending on the browser, will even show you a color picker, which is way too big. A beautiful color picker from which you can choose the color. And the resulting thing will be a string. And you can have so many other types. You can have an email input. So in here, you can just type emails. And if you type something else, it will probably somehow give you an error if you're not typing in an email. Bobby says, can we restrict the password for integers only? Yes, we can add some sort of validation, some basic validation, and I will show you in a while. Well, not in a while, because we're almost at the end of our lesson, but maybe next lesson we will see it, or you can start seeing it by yourself during the following week. We've got ranges, we've got numbers, we've got telephones. We've got so many kinds of inputs. The problem with these inputs is that they are rendered differently based on what browser you are using. So if you're using Safari, for example, and you're trying to use a color input, probably the color will be rendered slightly differently from what I have here on Chrome. That's the bad news. The good news is that, well, most of the browsers nowadays are turning to Chromium-based browsers. So they are using the Chromium engine, which was created by Google, and they're adding their own window and functionalities. Even Microsoft Edge is turning into a Chromium-based browser. And this, on one hand, means that Google is starting to have a monopoly on browsers, which is not really good. And that's why I still praise Firefox and the Mozilla Foundation that strives to have an open web, which doesn't give the monopoly to only one company. So Firefox is not a Chromium-based browser and will never be a Chromium-based browser because they want to have an alternative to Google's engine. But from another certain point of view, if every browser runs on the same engine, then it will be so much easier for us developers to have a consistent look and feel among browsers. We can type any code we want and we can be quite sure that it will behave pretty much the same on every single browser since they are based on the same engine, apart from Mozilla Firefox. So I don't know, this monopoly, it has some goods and has some bads. And you will see that in IT, in computer science, there's nothing really bad or good. It's just something more useful or less useful according to our needs. So yeah, this is a password input. What happens if I now type something and click on the button? Okay, what? I completely wiped out all of my fields and it just refreshed the browser by adding a question mark here. What is this thing? It's way too complicated to... I see that OBS says that I'm disconnected and it's trying to reconnect. Can't you see me once again, right? Okay, reconnection successful. I don't know you guys, but I see myself way too light. There's too much light here. And I don't know if you're still with me, but you know what? I'm going to wrap it up and close it here because we're having too many issues today, too many technical issues. Just want to make sure that you're still here with me. No, connection is down again 3 hours ago. Are you still there? Let me see if you're still there. And at the end, I will just upload this recording in which I'm fighting with myself. And we'll just say goodbye from here. You know what? I think that I'm experiencing connection problems. And these connection problems are even impacting my ability to type even yes, but I cannot see or hear. Okay, so you're still. You know what, guys? I don't know about the others, but the stream appears to be frozen again. Working. Oh, it's working again. I can hear you. Okay, now. You know what? It's almost 2 o'clock my time, which means almost 1 o'clock UTC. We had so many technical problems so far, so I just wanted to wrap it up and close the lesson for today. I'm really sorry for all the technical issues. I don't know if I can fix them. I will try to fix them on my side. I hope that this will not discourage you from following the following lessons, because we have so many cool and exciting things to see together. Please be strong and stick with me. But other than that, I think that we are over with this lesson. We didn't even see any CSS, but next time we'll maybe continue a little bit of HTML, maybe continue a little bit of forms if you haven't had the time or the chance to see forms by yourselves. And finally, we start with CSS. We'll have a couple of lessons probably about CSS, and then That's it. We're going to go with JavaScript. Remember that at the end of HTML and CSS, you are already hireable by someone. So you can just, improve your portfolio, share it with us, and maybe start applying to some jobs, some HTML web developer jobs. Or otherwise, or in the meantime, we will continue with our academy and we will start working with JavaScript, and this will be real programming. Thanks for the lesson, says PNTM. So, thank you guys. Thanks a lot for sticking with me, even with this difficult situations that we have. Thank you, Rachel. Thanks a lot for joining us. I don't know if you started joining from the start or from 1 hour later. We'll still have all the recordings there. So yeah, thanks a lot, Angelo, too. And have a wonderful rest of the week. We will see next Saturday. So in the meantime, I'm so bright. From my bright picture, let me see, just me. Whoa, I look like a spirit. Thanks for the lesson. It was really informative as usual. Really happy to hear that. So how do I... Goodbye, guys. Eat pasta, code faster, and I really hope to see you soon in better technical situations. Bye.